Thank you. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to what is now our sixth supply chain procure to pay Oracle Aggie Enterprise demonstration meeting. We're very happy to have you here. As you just noticed from the warning, we are going to be recording this session as we have had recorded the previous ones. So they'll be available for posterity's sake. If you don't know me, I'm Mike Keener. I oversee our supply chain group. We have a number of my team members here today to walk through what we are referring to as a tour of some of the procure to pay functionality in the new Oracle platform. This is not meant to be a training. So we want to remind people that there's no need to take notes or diligently, even too diligently pay attention, but do get a flavor for what is coming. Our goal with all of these is to very much socialize our campus, make sure that everybody is has no excuses for being surprised come January about what new system they see. You may see a few things here from our team members when they're demonstrating components that you may not have when we get into production in January, and that of course is not a surprise. We're still testing the system, so people have more access than might be available for everybody else. Our goal with these demonstrations has been and still is to have people come back every month. We have changed the flavor each month of what we show, focusing on different areas. The idea is to spend what we now have another 4 or 5 months of demonstrations available to us to keep showing different aspects of the system and either doing a higher level overview, which is what today might be more of, and then some months do a more of a drill in on certain sections like we've done in some previous months. So please keep coming. We also will be providing at the end of this session a link for a survey. That is an opportunity for you to let us know what things you want to see next month or in the coming months, as well as just give us a feel for how well the system is going to meet your needs. I do want to remind everybody that my supply chain team here has no direct ownership or oversight of the chart of accounts. So we know that is a area of pain for some groups. We apologize. We have sympathy and empathy, but we can't fix those things for you. So don't come harping us on that. Keep yourselves on mute if you don't mind. We will be today doing sort of an overview from start to finish, from requisitioning to purchasing to the invoicing and then to the payments. And at each, I'm sorry, actually a supplier first. At each phase, we'll have a little break in between, usually at points when things are routing for workflow approval and things like that, where folks are welcome to come off mute and ask a few questions. But predominantly today, try to put as many questions as possible into the chat, and we will respond to those as quickly and as promptly as possible. Please go easy on everybody here. They're all volunteering their time from their day jobs to do this. We're all in this together. Everybody at UC Davis is going to try to hit the ground running come January, and the more we can all be on the same team, I think the better we're all going to be. And I think that's pretty much it. So if we miss any questions during the chat, during the presentation, if we don't answer anything sufficiently or you didn't get a chance to ask, that's another great use for our survey at the end. So just another plug there to try to get in there. And with that, I'm going to hand the baton over to, who's going first? Is it Mark?
Yeah.
Mark's going first. He's going to, so I actually am going to retract my supplier comment. I don't think we are doing suppliers today. Is that right?
I'm going to show how to search for suppliers.
Searching. Wonderful. Take it away, Mark.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen and you see the Oracle instance on the left and the quotation on the right. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you one of 2 ways to find the supplier. The first one is to go into your Oracle homepage. To find it, you simply click the home button, then look for the button that's called suppliers. Click on that as it loads. Hopefully it loads. Come on. There we go. There off to the right is these 3 buttons. This top one, the tasks. Clicking on this will allow you to go to manage suppliers. And this allows you to search. We use keywords for the suppliers. So in this case, I'm looking for one workplace. I just type in and hit search, and we see all the options for one workplace down at the bottom. And you can click into it and see more details for the supplier. To see what addresses, so I'm going to make sure that this address on this quotation is in the system. So I'm going to go on ahead, scroll to this tab that says addresses, click on that. And I'm going to see that this one is 1780 North Market. So it's purchasing 9, so PUR 9. So I'm just going to make a mental note of that so I don't have, in case I forget. But so now I'm going to go in and enter the requisition for this particular order. One of the ways to do that is to simply go up here and then click the purchase requisitions button. So now we get to the requisitions splash page. And I'm going to scroll down since we're starting with a quantity on line 1. I'm going to click under the request forms, a quantity-based requisition. And it's going to take me to the page as it loads. And then I'm going to start filling in the data. So I am ordering standing desks. The category, you should always use the correct category code, which is the current situation of commodity codes. For this demonstration, I'm going to use hardware because we know it will route to the appropriate person for this demonstration. We are ordering 15 standing desks for each, and then the price is $12.50 each. Supplier. So this is the other place where you can look for suppliers. And for those that work in the requisitions, this is probably going to be your better option. Start typing in 1, and you'll start seeing that it narrows it down to your various options. So as I go through, I have one workplace, one world. We know we're dealing with one workplace, so click on that. And so this is where I made the mental note of purchasing 9, but you can also search in here for what the address is you're looking for by clicking the search button. And then simply re-hitting that search button again, it will give you all the options. Then to see these, you'll have to kind of expand the columns as needed. So I could see 1780 North Market Boulevard, Sacramento. So I'm going to click on that, click OK. It's going to bring it back into the system. Tab out. It's going to bring in any associated information that may be in there. Right now, the system's not completely built out, so it's not full filled out. So now that I've added that, I'll add to the cart. And now I'm going to add the second item is the setup labor for these desks. So I'm going to use a fixed price base requisition, which will change the look of the screen. And we're going to say setup labor. Category name is I'm going to use, I think it was service. Forgot which one I chose. Yeah. I'm just going to use hardware for this test, because I can't remember exactly which one I figured for that earlier. And this is for $2,000 of the setup labor. We have to re-enter the supplier information again. The good thing is once you've started entering it, even same day, I've seen the supplier say come to the top. So as demonstrated here, you can see PUR 9, which is the one we know is accurate, is at the top for easier selection. Go ahead and tab through that. And then we click add to cart. So I'm going to click into the cart and I'm going to review it. This was unplanned, but looks like I forgot to erase something from a test I did earlier, but this will be a good demonstration. So line 1 is a widget that's not on the quote. So I'm going to simply go up here and click delete, and it's going to remove that item from the quote. I'm going to update the information for the description business purpose. So I'm going to say this is standing desks for supply chain. The best practice is always to update it. Your first line is going to autofill the description business purpose, but you should always add the details. That way the fiscal officer or people in the future could see what that intended purpose was. So now we're going to scroll down to these. To edit multiple lines really quickly, you could either click in the upper right to click all, or you could select individual lines and hit control to select all of them, and then go into the edit multiple lines. From there, you can make all the changes down under the line 2 or line details. So delivery location and requester. So in this case, the requester is Matt Zarnowski. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say edit multiple lines. And the requester is going to be the attention line on the shipping information. So it's last name, comma, first name. for helping to find this out. Deliver to location is going to be 615 Hopkins. So I'm going to start typing that in and let Oracle find that address for me. So now I've done that. And then I'm going to click OK, and it's going to make these edits to both of these lines. So I'm going to now save. And then I'm going to double check that tax was added by clicking the calculate amount with tax. And so we could see that it's adding the correct amount, semi-correct amount of tax, because it's actually adding the tax for this setup labor because of the category codes I use. So everything looks good to me at this point. So I'm going to go on ahead and simply hit submit. And we could take questions at this time on the requisition process.
There's a question regarding what if you don't have a quote?
Well, best practice is always to have a quote, but if you do not, then thank you, Kimberly. I just realized I forgot to add the quote. So actually, since I made this mistake before Eddie submits it, I'm going to go in and add this quote. So I'm going to actually withdraw and edit. Best practice is to always have a quote. But if you do not have one, then just provide the documentation of where you got this pricing. Especially on anything over 10,000, we should have a formal quote in hand. So I'm going to go in and click on this requisition. And I'm going to withdraw and edit. Oh, yes, that's correct. So it's asking me that it's pending approval and I'm withdrawing it. So to add the attachments, thank you for reminding me. Click the plus sign up here for your header attachments. And we're going to send this to the buyer. And we're going to choose the file. And I'm going to choose quote.pdf. And then as I tab over, it's going to fill in the auto information. And I'm going to say this is quote 24601. And then I'm going to add a note here for the supplier to know what quote I am referencing for their ease. So I'm going to say it's a text note to supplier, and I'm going to say the quote is number 24601 and dated 7/25/2023. Okay, sorry about that. Completely skipped a step. So now I've resubmitted it and Eddie can take over on the approval process.
All right, thanks, Mark. Let me share my screen. And hopefully you all can see my Oracle here. So I have a lot of notifications, a lot of testing going on, but as you can see, I don't have Mark's approval yet. It should be coming in within a minute or so. I was looking at, I believe, Kat's question about the delivered to location does not auto-populate. So the very first step that you want to do when it comes to your procurement setup is to set up your requisition preferences. So that is a very first step that we put in all of our trainings and that we put in all of our guides that we've been doing for testing. When you set up those preferences, you would want to set up that deliver to location as a default. If it were to not auto-populate, let's say for whatever reason, you can just then go back and select it. I mean, things similar to what Mark did when he changed the deliver to location. But you should be able to, and I think Matt just put it in there, you should be able to find all the university locations in there when you're searching. Okay, let's see if I got it. There you go. So you guys can see Mark's requisition came into my bell. This is my notification as the approver. So I don't know that we touched on it, but if you don't know, the financial department segment of the chart of accounts is what is going to drive who's going to get approval for this requisition. We will be setting up multiple approvers per financial department so that there's coverage. And that is the design that we have right now. And all of them will get the same notification at the same time. So if I have a few more folks within my team that have the same role for the department approver, we will all get this. When I open and I hit claim as the approver, Now I'm taking that approval away from everyone else, and then I'm signaling that I am working on this approval. So now that I am doing, I claimed it myself. You can see some of the options, some of the actions that you have here. You could delegate this approval, so I can pass it over maybe to somebody else that is more appropriate to make the approval for this requisition. I got route task, which is somewhat your ad hoc routing. So I am approving the requisition and then moving it on to the next person. So I'm not going to pass it on, but you can see here that if I select that, I could find the name of the individual, put in a comment as to why I may be ad hoc routing it, and then I can approve. Again, when I'm doing this, I am approving the rec and then moving it on to the next person. Release would essentially be release the claim that I just hit. So if I maybe hit claim on accident, or I hit claim and I decide that I might not be the person that should be approving the requisition, I can release it, and then my other counterparts that are also approvers for this department can pick it up. And then we can add comments, we can add attachments if we'd like. Just on the approval though, you are not making changes to the requisition yourself. If there is something that is off with the requisition, maybe I'm the one that catches that Mark forgot to attach the quote and we know we need it there, I would need to reject that requisition. It will go back to Mark, he will add the attachment, submit it again, and it'll go back into workflow. All right, so in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and approve. And I can put a comment, all looks good. It's not mandatory, you don't have an asterisk here, but just adding that in there for our purposes. Okay, and our workflow, I think it's somewhat similar to what we have today in Quali. Your department approver in Aggie Enterprise, what used to be your fiscal officer, usually will go first, and then you go into some additional routing, whether it be maybe assets or special routing, such as EH&S or the police department. You could also have, I'm missing one here, special approval assets, and I don't know. I'll come back to me when I do approvals later, maybe. But there's, again, very similar routing as you have today in Quali. All right. So while this goes over to the procurement area, so this should move over to Mike Morgan as he'll take over. Let me see if I have any questions here. And I do have one from Shirin. The actions list, can you review the differences between delegate and route task? Yeah, Shirin, no problem. So delegate is essentially, I'm doing a lateral move. I'm just moving it over to I'm saying, maybe I'm not the best person to approve this. I'm delegating you that approval. I am not approving it myself. I'm just moving it over to you to actually approve it. Route task, I'm approving it and moving it over to one more person to look at it as well. So it's just, one kind of moves it to the side, maybe horizontal is the best way to look at it. And then route task is vertically, I move it up one up. When you click release, does it stay in limbo or will it alert anyone that it needs to be assigned? That's a good question. I can confirm that for you, Arnolfo. I believe that when you hit release, it just goes back to the remaining of everyone else within that approval group can see it again, so they'll be able to take action on it. So I don't know that there is a new alert because they already had received one in the first place. They'll just be able to take action on it. There you go, Mike. Thank you for that. That's the approval that I was missing. Tax compliance if we do select the R&D selection.
Caught up on questions, Eddie?
I think we're good.
Everybody can see my screen, hopefully. So this is, I'm on the purchase order screen here. So this would be the buyer's dashboard. There are two ways that fiscally approved requisitions will come to the buyers. One is in the bell. And if it shows up in the bell, and there it is there, we'll get to that. If it shows up in the bell, the requisition had all the minimum required information to automatically prepare a purchase order for review and approval. If there was not enough information, like this, we didn't know who the supplier was because we were going out to bid, it's going to show up for the buyers in the process requisition screen. And so this is where it's filtered by me. I have one in there that is missing a supplier. And at that point, I can either grab it add it to the document builder and actually turn it into a purchase order because it was missing information. Now what we have to do what the system did automatically manually. So we grab it, we turn it into, add it to the document builder, we add the supplier, any additional information, and then we can go ahead and create the purchase order manually for us to work on and then submit for approval again. Or at this point, if this was for someone else, I could highlight it and actually reassign it to a different buyer. But all of the buyer's approvals are going to happen through this bell up here. So this one here is the purchase order that just came in 2 minutes ago. And there's the requisition that they created. It came in, it had all the minimum information required to have the system generate a purchase order. If there were additional actions that the buyer would need to take, they could go ahead and go into it. And similarly, like Mark did when he forgot the attachment, we would then have to, because it's in workflow, we would have to withdraw it, and then we could go ahead and edit it and add any attachments or any notes that we needed to go to the supplier, or the DFF, the defined flex field. Maybe it's a covered service, maybe it's a blanket purchase order and we need to add the end date. Any additional information that the buyer would need to do before approving that document. If everything looks good, they can go right into the bell and same action. They can go ahead and approve it. They can reassign it, route the task, withdraw it, but this one is good to go. So we're just going to go ahead and approve this purchase order so that we can move on. Approve, same thing. If there are any additional comments that we want to capture in the system, go ahead and add them. If not, submit. And that purchase order is now approved. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Erin was asking that she said, she noted that you said that for this example, it was missing a supplier. Does that mean that you will be able to submit a purchase agreement or purchase order without an active vendor in the system?
You will be able to submit a requisition that will come over, and I can actually show you what I'm talking about here. Process requisitions, I believe this one is also. So if I take this, and because it's mine, and I add to document builder, this is the automated thing that happens. This one has a vendor, so it was something else that it was missing. But if it's incomplete, it's going to add into this process requisition section. The majority of them that we're going to see are, we don't know who the supplier is, we need to go out to bid, you're going to submit the requisition, you're going to give all of the pertinent information, leave the supplier blank, and then it's going to reside over here into this area.
And Aaron, I think from a best practice perspective, if you are requesting a supplier to get added to the system, we would want that process to go through first, and then the requisition to be submitted with that supplier. I think there's a couple different scenarios, right? One where you know who the supplier is, but it needs to be added to the system first. We would want that as best practice for that supplier to be added and then the requisition created. I think there's the other scenario, which I think, Mike, you're explaining, right? Where we don't know who the supplier may be. We need help to identify one.
Right.
So that's kind of a different process.
Yeah, initiating
a
a request for bid, right? We don't know who the end supplier is going to be, but we know the need for goods or services. So that's how you can convey that information. So basically, in the process requisition, it just means that the minimum information required for the system to automatically generate a purchase order for review and approval was not satisfied.
And then Mike, George has a question. Do you expect the same amount of turnaround time for the buyers to fully approve requisitions that require their review?
We will be shooting for that. Still the 10-day, although since we've rolled out of COVID, we've seen about a 40% increase in workload. We're trying to fill vacant positions. So as we move into the system in January, the buyers will be versed in the system, but that is going to be the first time that we're actually dealing with live orders. So I think, like Mike mentioned at the beginning, bear with everybody through those first couple of months as I don't even want to say get our toes wet, right? As we dunk ourselves into the system. But yes, the goal is always the 10-day turnaround. So we'll be striving for that, and we're striving for that now. We're going through recruitments to try to onboard more people to help with that increased workload.
Eddie, I'm wondering if you might be best suited to answer that last question in chat.
Is it the one from Elizabeth?
Yes.
I'm just typing it up. Yes. And I guess I'll type it up too, but we will have an opportunity here. There's gonna be another set of approvals after we process invoices. So I'll be able to show maybe another place to see outstanding items. And then also after we are done with the process here, I'm gonna somewhat go back and do a quick recap by searching through some of the documents that we created. So Elizabeth, hopefully while going through that, some of these questions will be answered.
And then one more thing that I'll show, and then I'll pass the baton. So the other thing is you saw us approve the document, the purchase order, and then we get an FYI that it was done. So the requisition and the PO, everything went swimmingly.
Right. Carla?
Hi. Let me share my screen. Everyone seeing my screen? Yes, let me move it over to the right area. So for invoicing, the requisition just generated a PO. I am actually going to go in and enter the invoice, but in the real work life, the vendor or the department will send the invoice to invoicing@ucdavis.edu, and it will be scanned into our bucket to come in. So here is a sample of the invoice that I'm going to enter quickly. We're going to assume this invoice had the PO on it, which we just learned was UCD PO 1234585. The remit address is all information that I'm taking from the invoice. Let's correct here to show more. 1780 North, yes. Invoice number is INV 24601. The amount of the invoice is 14,746.25. Standard today's date. We're going to change it to immediately pay for the next session we're going to do. For here is where we save. And now opens the lines on the PO to match it. We're going to pay 10 for $12.50. And then the labor is $13.40. Okay. We match our invoice to see something's wrong. What's wrong? tax. That's what it is. So I have to go add in the tax. Is there we go. Matches our header, matches our total. I can then go and validate. It does validate. So I'm going to now approval initiate, so you can go on to the next step.
Carla, do you set that one
Again,
up with the, sorry, do you set that one up with the payment method?
I sure didn't.
I might have missed it.
I didn't do it. Thank you.
No
I
worries.
forgot. We're going to change this one to in-house check so that we can do the next date. Thank you. Save and close. It's already validated, so I'll approval initiated to be able to push it on. And save and close. So you want me to enter in the other invoice that's over? Oh, this one will be over 10,000. So the other one that I should do that's under 10, correct?
Yeah, and I can take it once we have the approvals, I can take it over and kind of explain the difference between the two.
Okay, so let me just enter in the other one under the other PO number that's under 10,000, so that we'll have that example. Again, this is just me entering in for presentation. The invoices will not be entered like this manually. They'll be scanned into invoicing at ucdavis.edu and they'll populate into the system. We're not managing or creating.
I think it's 585, Carla. There you go.
Thank you. 11780 is there. So those lines match. Fine. Okay. I'm gonna add the taxes. Matches header. Going to validate. And approval initiate. Any questions? That's a no. So now the invoice, we'll route to Eddie. Or are there questions in the chat, Trigger? No?
I think we're up to date
believe-
right now.
Okay.
Going through it as well. Okay. All right. Thanks, Carla. So I can take it back again. We didn't really go through that because I was going to explain here, but Carla just processed 2 different invoices, right, for the same purchase order, which is normal, happens all the time. And one of those invoices was under 10K and one was over 10K. So in future state, both of them were matching the PO, so they're two-way matched. The under 10K invoice should auto approve. They will not require further approval from the department approver, but the ones over 10K will. So my expectation, hopefully we didn't miss anything, there will be one invoice coming my way. But before I even show that, I'm going to quickly show how I'll be able to search for invoices created against APO. There's a couple different ways that we will look today, but I'm going into the invoice area and I'm going to manage invoices, which is essentially search invoices. And then under this search area, there's drop down. There's a different ways of looking at searches. One of the things that folks are going to learn as they come into the system is that there's a lot of customization you could do for your searches. And you can save them in as many as you like. In this case, there's a template for a purchase order search, which I'm going to select. And I'm going to put in my purchase order here. And I'm going to hit search. And it's going to give me 2 invoices that Carla created. And already you see a lot of information that you may need. You may not need to drill into the invoice if you don't like, but you actually, again, has already some columns in here that you can use. We won't go into detail too much on that here, but there's a way to shift your columns around if you want to view certain columns that may not be shown. I've already selected show all. I'm doing that for most of my searches everywhere in Aggie Enterprise. But if it's not selected, you can select that and you can see all of the available columns for the different documents you're looking into. Again, in this case, in this view right here, you can see most of the key items. I see my invoice number. You can even see right here approval status, right? As I mentioned, the one invoice under 10K, two-way match the PO exactly. Once Carla submitted it to initiate approval, that approved automatically, no intervention by the department approver. The second one over our threshold of 10K is an initiated status. That means he has gone for department approver, which in this case will be me. So I would expect to have that invoice sitting in my bell, which I do right here. Then to Elizabeth's question earlier, when I'm on my bell, I can hit this more details kind of button, and it opens up this work list area, which has a lot more information on a lot of my pending items. It's a bit of a better view of the things that are pending for yourself. So again, I can see the invoice from Carla, similar as I would have done for my bell. I click on it. As an approver, I probably should be going into the invoice, looking at attachments, make sure that everything in there makes sense, and then we should move forward with payment on it. But again, just as part of this demonstration, just kind of browsing down to the line so you can see all the information available, shows you the payment method, your taxes, your lines that are listed in here, the PO, and I'm just going to go ahead and approve. Similar, you had the claim button here that you could have done. They could have clicked, and then you get the same options that I did on the requisition. So in this case, I'm just going to hit approve because what we're going to do now, and we're going to do this behind the scenes because we don't necessarily need to show the payment process. This will really be automated once we go live. But Susan from our disbursements team is going to be running to the payment for both of these invoices behind the scenes. And I'm going to go and look at some of the documents that we've created kind of beginning to end. By the time I get back to invoices, hopefully we'll be able to see the payment showing up alongside the invoice as well. Let me see if we have any questions here. Okay, I think we're caught up. Okay. I will show one thing very quickly, so for comparison's sakes. Again, I just approved this invoice. We'll go into detail for all the tabs in a minute. If I go to the payments tab, there's no payment yet. Again, the hope is once Susan goes through the process while I'm showing some other things, I'll come back here and it will be a payment showing up. Okay. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back to the beginning, right? So Mark created a requisition, and maybe I am Mark's supervisor, and I'm trying to go back and look at all the requisitions that have been created by Mark. So I'm going to go back into the purchase requisition area, and I'm going to go back here to manage requisitions. Similar to other searches, this is my own specific favorite safe search because I'm looking at all the requisitions created by everybody. I just put REQ, so it shows me every single requisition in the environment. In this case, again, maybe I want to look for all the recs created by Mark, so I'm going to select enter by, as he's the one that created them, and I'm going to search, and I'll be able to see all of the requisitions created by Mark. So in this specific case, right, 1177 is the one that he just created for this demo. You can see some basic information as well. If the order is already open, or in this case, closed for invoicing, because it's been fully invoiced, it'll show up in this column. You can see some of the other recs he has created in the past. Don't have the PO here. You know, these recs are not even approved, so it makes sense that there's no purchase order. These ones are approved, but maybe the the purchasing team hasn't gone to them yet and approved them, like Mike did for this specific purchase order. So in this case, I'm just going to go back into the requisition just to kind of show what it looks like. Very similar to what Mark showed earlier. At the line level, you scroll right. Again, you can see the purchase order number in here if you like. And this is a hyperlink that we can utilize. I'm going to click on this hyperlink, and I'm going to show a bit of a gap here, I guess I should say, with Oracle. When you select the hyperlink and come into this purchase order area, you actually have view-only access to this PO. So if you try to do the actions drop down, nothing pops up. There's actually a button here that you'll see under order life cycle. When I search for this PO in a different manner, that's not available. So you can see the PO if you just want to maybe see some specific, basic information on the PO. You can come from the hyperlink from the rec. But otherwise, the recommendation would be to take the PO number and then go from the purchase order area to look into more details for this order. So that's what I'm going to do now. So Shireen, I see your question now, so I'll stop for a minute. So the fund status, we've gotten a lot of questions on that, and unfortunately it's not something that we, I don't want to say care too much about, but it's not as important. The fund status is the way that Oracle set up. If the order has been created, it's almost you're reserving the funds. It's more of a accounting function that doesn't really, again, apply to most of what we're doing. But when you submit the requisition and you approve it, it's almost like you're reserving the funds to be utilized from the requisition. Once the purchase order is created, you're liquidating that reserve because you're creating an encumbrance. So we're just talking, your requisitions creates commitments. When you create the PO, the commitment gets closed. Now the encumbrance is open. When you create an invoice, that encumbrance gets closed, and now you have the expense. I think we're just talking accounting terms, and I know we have gotten questions about that, but that's really what it is. We're just talking about that kind of encumbrance piece behind the scenes. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
Yep, thank you.
No problem. All right, so let me go back. I was going to head over to the purchase order area, so I'm going to go to the PO here. And again, I'm coming in more of as an inquiry. I'm just inquiring about this, right? I'm not a buyer. I'm not going to be processing anything on the POs. I can go to the magnifying glass because I have my PO number, and I'm going to go to orders. I'm going to put my PO here. Hopefully I still have it. I do. Hit enter on that. And then now, as you can see the difference, when I hit actions, I actually have some actions. I do have the buyer role, so I have more than what you would see once you go live. But the one that I really wanted to point out was this area right here, which is the order lifecycle and view details. When you hit on view details, you can actually see, right, we had the order that was originally $20,750. It has been fully invoiced already for $20,750. So you can see that in the PO. And if you scroll down, you can actually see the invoices associated with that PO. We have a couple different options, right? You could have gone into the invoice could have entered the purchase order and you would have found the invoices in that area. But you can also come into the purchase order area, go into the PO, and then you can see the invoices that are associated with it. So a couple different ways of navigating the system. Okay. So let me see if I can put a little pressure on you, Susan. How is that payment go through yet or still going through?
We're close. Just
Okay, cool. So I will go ahead and just start going to the invoice area. So again, we look at the requisition. Now we look at the purchase order. Now let's go back to payables. Again, I'm just looking at things. I'm just doing an inquiry on them. And then I'm going to go back to the manage invoices area. Right. Oh. Ooh, Jim, would you want to, maybe I could wait a little bit here. Would you want to give a little, I know you put here on the chat, do you want to give a little training update?
Absolutely. Thanks, Eddie. So yeah, we're doing a really good job getting training resources developed. We're currently working with the Aggie Enterprise Change Communications and Training team on 5 different e-learning courses, including Introduction to Purchasing, which will kind of give an overview of the layout of Aggie Enterprise. Also catalog purchasing, so how to use the existing catalogs for making purchases. Non-catalog purchasing, so what to do if what you want is not in one of the catalogs. Also how to do purchase order amendments. And then finally, a guide for our approvers on approving requisitions and invoices. We will have those e-learning guides. They will all be about 15 to 20 minutes long, but we know that once people start using the system, they're going to want to have step-by-step guides. And I've been working really closely with Eddie and our entire Aggie Enterprise team here within supply chain management, as well as within governance, and then also with our super users, both our departmental processors and the financial approvers on a lot of our feedback on our guides. They've been using the guides already in testing, which is great. So we have been road testing them for the last several months, which is really good. We will also be working on some how-to videos. So we're hoping to kind of target some of the areas that people may have questions on, like setting up their requisition preferences, some of the things that Eddie has shown us today, including how to see all the different fields on your Aggie Enterprise screens and that sort of thing. So we're pretty excited. We have a lot of things coming. And then even like the question a minute ago about the funds status, we are working on some guides as well about encumbrances, commitments, obligations, some of the information that people may not necessarily need right away, but we know some of you are looking at these documents from an accounting perspective, not necessarily just I want this good or service, but I want to understand what's going to happen to my accounts. So we also have guides coming up on that as well. So really lucky to be part of this team that's been helping create these guides, and that's the update for now, but hopefully in the next month or so, we'll be able to start showing you more of the actual guides. And then the other thing we're currently working on updating is our cutover calendar and dates and so forth. We'll be sending out more information soon on some of that too. So that's all I've got for now, Eddie.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're putting in a lot of effort, a lot of time to try to get this materials ready for everybody. We already have a lot of great information on our website. I'm sure Crystal and Jim might have linked it earlier. Please do, visit that one. We are updating a lot of things as they come and as we make some decisions. So if you want the most up-to-date information, you can always find them there. Okay, so let me, again, I was going back to the invoicing area now. So I'm just gonna go back to the invoices, same thing that we looked at earlier. I'm gonna go to the purchase order section. I'm gonna put in my purchase order. I'm going to hit search. And then I am going to go and just look at, again, one of my invoices and just maybe go to the tabs. Oh, there we go. You have a payment already. Awesome. Thanks, Susan. So, I mean, we can start here. So, right, earlier you saw this was empty. There was no payment in here. But normally what happened overnight or whatever the invoice, depending on the payment terms is due, the payments will run, and then you can go back to the invoice area and you can actually see a payment that run. This is an in-house check, so we'll print out locally. If I'm not mistaken, this is the actual check number. Is that correct, Susan?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Correct. And then I have some information here. So when I click on that, it shows me all of the payments. All of the invoices associated with that payment. In this case, we're actually looking at both of the invoices that we created today for this demo. So you can see, even though I'm in one of the invoices, when I click on the payment, I can see both. If there were more payments, which there usually are, you'll see a lot more items listed in here.
And Eddie, if you'd like, I can show a copy of the check.
Oh yeah, yeah. Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Stop sharing here.
So you can see we have a copy of the check that both invoices are listed at the top.
All right, and just to wrap this up, so back to the invoice here, you have a couple of different tabs. You have your lines, so you can see your lines here for the invoices, right? I'm looking at that one specifically, one of the two, the Carla process, so I can see the lines. I can see my tax lines summarized at the bottom here. I can see the approvals here as well. You know, one of the things that I like to do is kind of filter by the action date to kind of see what happened. You can kind of see Carla submitted it, she initiated it, you know, I approved it. So you can see my name here. And in distribution details is essentially your chart of account information. Whatever was listed in the invoice will be listed here as well. This is a report that was embedded into this view. So you'll be able to see again your chart of account values and the description for each of the segments as it has been used in that one invoice. Okay. So I think that is it for what we had today. We definitely cruised through it. A couple different ways of navigating to the screens, connecting different documents from the P2P workstream. So yeah, hopefully you found it helpful. I'm happy to take some more questions here if you guys have any.
If I can just take a minute real quick, Eddie. One thing that's been really valuable to us and maybe to you all as well is that after each of these demos, we have a little short survey about what you've seen and what you might want to see in the future. And we really, if you've been with us for a while, you'll note that we've taken that into account and tried to deliver what people are looking for. So I'm just going to drop that into the chat. It really only takes a few minutes, but we really appreciate any feedback you have on either the processes you saw or things you'd like to see in the future. And thank you, Mark. Yes, next month, we're still in the early stages of planning this, but next month we'd like to talk all about cutover planning, cutover dates, what's going on behind the scenes. If you have questions about that, we'll have some more information on what will be done, what you can do during the interim time period, if in case there's an emergency or something like that. So that's going to be on I think it's the 21st of August, and hopefully you all can make it and we'll see you then. And as far as access to this recording, yes, we will, all of our recordings, thanks Mark, all of our recordings are available through our website, and it just takes me a day or two to get this cleaned up and then we'll get it posted. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Well, we ended early today. We didn't need the full hour and a half. I guess maybe we should say Oracle's not that slow. We'll take it. If you have any questions, stick around because I know I can stick around for a little bit longer in case you have any questions about any of what you've seen, maybe something a little bit different. We're happy to stick back. Otherwise, Crystal, unless you have anything else to speak on, I think we're good. Thank you guys for coming, and as always, hopefully you guys can come back next month. We'll definitely love to have you here.